Okay, hello preppers, homesteaders, preppersteaders. In this episode, we're going to go over strategic relocation in the United States. So right now, as you can see that change right there. I have the United States Census, their 2020 current map. And the number one reason for relocation, if you're a prepper, homesteader, whatnot, in general, is population density. Population density generally equals crime, equals more people, equals more problems. Not that in general we're against people, but in general people equals more problems. So as you can see, this map has all the states. I'm gonna not go over Hawaii and Alaska because those are just outliers, and that's a whole nother dynamic right there. But as you can see, it kind of goes over the criteria here, and I'm gonna I apologize, my screen is not the best size, but right here is the legend. So just to give you an idea, light like this in general is low population, low density. Dark blue, high population. But as you will see, as you zoom in, it starts to change and it'll start breaking it down even more. So those states that in general are not the greatest because there's, the coloring, or they may have a low population state such as like Arizona, but they're still going to have regions right here that are high population density. And as you can see, I'll zoom in right here. This is where I was at in Kenosha County here. And as you can see, Kenosha County, the blue is, we got Milwaukee, Chicago, dark blue. Our fear is we were in this county right here. We're actually right at the end of it right there. Right almost to that line, literally. But this will be all blue, dark blue, and it'll spread out. That's what's happening. In our area right here, every old homestead, every old farm was being sold and turned into subdivisions. Since we've moved, we've only been gone a year, I've seen probably about 100 new houses in that county. And in our new area, I've seen 2 houses being built. So just to give you an idea of the explosion in growth. So this is your number one chart, I would say. And you would look at this chart. Another chart that's very similar is the census, is their crime chart. And if you look at this, it's very similar. Where there's more people, there's more crime. But one of the other charts that is beneficial to look at is nuclear power plants. That is an issue. And we are in Arkansas, and we have one right there. You can see my finger. Sometimes it's hard to see there. But as you can see in Wisconsin, we had one there too. We had a whole bunch in Illinois. There was decommissioning ones on the Great Lakes there. So that is another map to look at. Then if you go on the internet, there's various maps. So like this is like the first cities to get strike in a nuclear attack, which really doesn't bother me. I don't really worry about that much. But the one thing that is a possibility you want to look at, because if you do look at this map, you're kind of like, wow, look at all this space over here. There's just tons of space that there's no people. But then if you look here, you'll see these big clusters of nuclear targets. If you've ever driven out west, most of our nuclear bases, nuclear missile silos, I actually went into the Nuclear Missile Silo Museum out in Montana, and there's tons of them there. So same thing with Wyoming, and that's why there's big clusters right there and also there. So just because there's not a lot of people there does not mean it's a safe space also. You got to look into that. So this is pretty much the map that is the original map that I showed with some of the highlighted nuclear spots, the crime, everything, and it kind of gives you some spaces in here that you can see that are more than likely relatively safe spaces. And in general, almost every state has low population areas and areas that are safe from most threats. But then you need to break it down to what region you want to go to. You don't want to just spin the dial and be like, oh, I'm going to move to, Nevada, Wyoming, South. You need to kind of break that down, what you want to live in. Because once you're into those, you'll see, just to give you an example, here's Iowa. See this right there? I'm circling, if you can see my mouse, this blue county that is high population density. I'm going to just keep zooming. And then once you get within this blue county, you'll see this whole area here is low population. This area is, a little bit higher, but here's where all the population is. But then you zoom out, and just to give you an example, that's Polk. But there it goes, it turns blue again. So just to give you an example, my old stomping ground, there we go. Go out again, so it's blue. There's Kenosha County. The riots, Kyle Rittenhouse, all that. So here is Kenosha. Here is the line of Kenosha. And I lived, let's see if I can remember. It wasn't that long ago, but let's see, zoom in. Okay, so I take it back. Kenosha County is bigger. So this is still Kenosha all the way to here. I want to say, yeah, okay, Burlington. I was in Burlington, so I was, let's see. In this area, somewhere. And it still even wasn't that low population. And I always joked because the next county over had less restrictions. Walworth County had less restrictions. You could get away with a lot more and things like that. But you could see these clusters. I mean, it's just, and one of the things you'll notice too, which generally equals more population, is more roads. You can see this is the small distance here, and there's just lots of roads. So, and I'm not saying that you go to Chicago, you might have, okay, there you go, you got a couple clusters of low population, but you're literally surrounded by people. So if there was ever an apocalyptic situation, refugees are going to go to, I would think that most people in Illinois are going to go to Wisconsin or something like that. So that's something to keep in mind. But then within these areas, once you find what you're looking for, once you kind of found your area you're going to look at, you want to look closer in that area. So I'm going to just do my county. Type it in. There we go. So there's going to show houses for sale, little houses. But what I like to do is once you have this whole map, you've got, this is all the houses in the area. But what is good about this is you go to this, I gotta go down here where it says map, you can click on flood, you can click on fire, you can click on, wind, you can click on air quality, heat. But the big one I would recommend is flood. And you're looking at that now, you're like, holy cow, that's like everything is flooded. Well, not really. The terrain out here goes, it's mountains. So you're going to have, just to give you an idea, so you can see roads here, but you can see that where the floodplain is. And then if you wanted to, you could go back to satellite view and zoom in on some of these, and just kind of see what's, the potential property you're looking at. You can make sure that you don't ever want to buy a house and a retreat or a cabin or anything that's in one of these floodplains. Because, I mean, we've all seen what happened with the floods this year and mountain communities getting washed away. Because a lot of people do build in floodplains. And you can see right here that some of these towns they're completely in a floodplain. And what's neat about this, even though I originally searched that area, I can zoom out to the whole state. And once you're within Zillow, you can go to other, well, actually I'm in the whole county there that I was looking at, but I can move around, you know. So now I'm in the Mark Twain National Forest in Missouri. I can zoom in, kind of the same thing, you know, you can see all the flooding, what's floodplain, what's not floodplain. So one of the towns, just using this as a reference so you could see how useful this is, Chimney Rock in North Carolina, very well affected by the flooding. So here it is right there. And zooming in on it, you can see this is town right there. I'm gonna just zoom out, take out the flood, go to none selected, but look at family campground, you know, this, businesses. You can see tons of businesses, highway, things like that. But when you click back on flood, it's all in the flood zone. So a lot of people choose to build in flood zones and take the risk. I am not one of those people, and I don't recommend that. So that is one of those things that you need to consider. Okay, once you pick your area you like and you realize you're relatively safe, you're kind of out, you know, away from most threats, low population density, things you're going to want to consider though is everyday life. My wife and I use the rule, the Walmart rule. We wanted to be at least within an hour distance to a Walmart. So I'm going to try to just pick some area. Here we go. I have no idea about this town. Maybe they have a Walmart. I'm going to do McCleanboro. I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but McCleanboro. Okay. And then I'm going to do directions. I'm going to do Walmart. And it will now show me that if I move to this town, I am 27 minutes from a Walmart. I recommend things you like, Walmart, restaurants, whatnot, do a search, because you need to realize, do you want to be every single day an hour from a Walmart? And the reason I say this is years ago, when my wife and I were originally looking for property, we were looking in Montana and Idaho. And anything we could find that was affordable was 2 hours from anything. You wanted to go to a store to get anything, a loaf of bread, whatnot. We were 2 hours, maybe more. If you were in an area that was close to stuff, and the price would go up, like Kalispell. Kalispell was a nice area. Whitefish, loved whitefish. Just cannot afford whitefish. The nicer the area in these low population states like Montana, you can't afford to live there. You literally need to live in the middle of nowhere. So you need to figure that out when you're doing your strategic relocation planning, because realistically, the chance of an apocalypse is pretty low. More than likely, you're going to be in this area living everyday life. And you need to make sure it's an area you like I said, because our current area in Arkansas, we're in this region, and you can see this is all national forest right here. This is National River here, and I'm in this region, and it's low population density, but I'm close to camping, I'm close to hiking. I've got a town of Harrison. I'm not too far away, less than an hour to get to Harrison. If I want to go fancy, I can go to Branson and Hollister, which it's funny because to get from this region to Harrison, see, it's not very far from the National Forest to Harrison. It takes you like almost an hour. To get from Harrison to Branson is like 15 minutes because it's all straight highway. This is all, once you start getting here, it's all mountains, this whole area. So you got to remember there's mountain miles and there's regular miles. 18 miles in Wisconsin when I lived there was a few minutes drive, 5-minute drive. 18 miles where I live is like an hour's drive. So you have mountain miles, and you need to keep that in consideration when you're looking, where you want to live. And also you have to think of traffic. So when I used to commute in this area, I used to commute from here to past Milwaukee to right about there. The drive was absolutely horrible. Never seen so much traffic in my life. When I drive from our house to Harrison or Hollister or Branson, it's a beautiful drive. There's like hardly any traffic. And you can see the difference. I mean, it's just not a lot of population in this area, this whole region. And it's interesting too, because I tried to find a plane. Branson's a pretty big city in my mind, and it's really not. There's no airport. You can't even get a Greyhound to go there, like to get people and family and friends to visit. I've tried multiple. You could get a Greyhound, but instead of being like a 10, 12-hour drive, it's like an 18, 20-hour drive because they stop everywhere. So you need to consider that too. So hopefully this was helpful. Like I said, use these tools. You've got the census map. You've got the Zillow mapping, which is, I think, powered by Google. You have a lot of different things you could use to find your areas. And then you need to just keep breaking it down even more, because the one thing you're going to need too is water. You're going to need, make sure you don't want to be in the middle of a desert. There are a lot of places in Arizona, things like that, where there's cheap land, no crime, no people, whatever, and there's no water. You need water. If you're not retired, unfortunately, where these high population areas are, that also equals jobs. So I'm not going to lie. Where I'm at, in this area, there's not a lot of jobs. If you want jobs, you probably need to go to like these areas or up here in this region. There's lots of jobs. So if you go closer in there, there's lots of jobs in Benton, Fayetteville, things like that. But you look out here, not a lot of jobs. So that's one thing to consider too. But if you're retiring, cost of living is lower in low population areas because there's less people, less jobs, less things. The prices are cheaper. So that's one thing a lot of people neglect, because one of the things, like, you want to go to Wyoming. Wyoming is low population, low jobs, low everything. But cost of living is high. I looked at property out here and I couldn't even afford a double wide on some acreage. Like, it's just insane how expensive land is. If you're near anything. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, yeah, I could probably afford some land, but then you're just complete off the grid and you're just really far. The closest and best prices I found were in the Black Hills area, close to Rapid City, but across the border. So you could actually, Rapid City would be your big city, but there was cheaper properties in Wyoming, but not much, and not much cheaper. So hopefully this is helpful. Like I said, you want to really study this stuff because this is going to be your life. I mean, you're going to move to these places, and like I said, the chance of an apocalypse is really low. So you need to find an area that you really like. And one of the things that these maps and different, flood mapping, trying to find a Walmart is not going to prepare you for is the culture of that area and the feel of that area. That's a big thing, because my wife and I realized that if we would have got this property out in Montana, we would have probably been miserable. There was one property we looked at in Arkansas. We actually two properties we made offers on, and we're glad we didn't get them. The area just didn't have the right fit and feel for us. And there was only one way that we could have found that out, is by actually boots in the ground going to those locations. Because the one area we looked at was a beautiful house, but it was near nothing. And it just had a weird vibe to it. We just didn't like it. The other one was the same. It was 7 miles down a dirt road. So every single time I want to go to town, every single time I want to go anywhere, I have to drive that far down a dirt road. And it just, we can tolerate ours at just under a mile on a dirt road. So every time I want to go to town, I got to drive that just under a mile. But what we really liked is we're 10 minutes away from a small town that has some restaurants, has a small, little mountain community. People are friendly. Everybody knows your name, or at least knows your face. It's really nice. That made it beneficial for us. But like I said, if we would have been in that one other property we looked at, and I found a property in Idaho that was affordable, and it was a subdivision, kind of, almost. It was 40-acre lots that just happened to be that way. It wasn't like a developer was selling it, but it was, up here somewhere, middle of nowhere, and your neighbors had 40-acre lots, and there was like maybe 10 other houses within this region, and then you were 2 hours from any town. So, I mean, it's pretty cool because you have community and all, but it's just not what we wanted. Even where we're at, our hospital ambulance is a helicopter. The helicopter, covers Boone, Newton, probably Searcy, a couple different counties. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. And like I said, this search, take your time, look at lots of places, because it's not just nuclear safety, crime safety from people, low population deaths. You want a combination of it all, but you also don't want to, and don't get me wrong, there's some of you that will be totally content in the middle of Wyoming, hours away from anybody on your off-grid cabin, and that's cool. But my wife and I, we did not want that. We still wanted some community. We still wanted, people around, but not close. We want our space. You got to do a lot of studying before you're going to do this, because, this is your life, and we don't want to move again. And one of the things, once we did this move, we priced ourselves out of Wisconsin. We just can't afford it anymore. The area there is so expensive. So you need to look at places to go, things to worry about. And since you're preppers on this channel, I'll throw one more outlier out there. There's a, a map. I've seen it, and it shows what's going to happen when the poles reverse, which a lot of people think it has happened before and it will happen again. So in the map of that, just to give you an idea, so we got the Mississippi over here that goes, it literally becomes really big, and even half of Arkansas all the way up to here is like underwater. This is all underwater over here. This is all underwater. So it's very similar to that population density map. The coasts are very populated. So, but I'm leaving it at that. Good luck on your search. If you ever have any questions, reach out to me. Locally, I know a good deal about this area, and I can give, if anybody's looking in this area, if anybody's looking into Wisconsin, I know of areas, because believe it or not, while we were in Wisconsin, we lived here. I was looking at land in this area. It's known as the driftless area. And it is the only area in Wisconsin that has not mountains, but very close to mountains. It's very mountainous in here. And I had a triangle that I picked that I wanted to be within. And unfortunately, let's see if I can find it here, Madison, very high population density, crime, blah, blah, blah. The driftless is their playground. And a lot of people from Madison will buy properties here because you can commute, and so the prices of properties here were very high. But my triangle that I had out here was Richland Center to smaller town Viroqua, and there was one other one. I had like a triangle that I absolutely loved that area. But unfortunately, if you looked at the size of this whole state, and this is literally the only mountainous area right there, so you have very low supply and high demand of people. Where you go down to the Ozarks, and it's like this whole area is the Ozarks and the Ouachita Mountains. So you got all, the mountains over here, mountains over there, mountains over here. So if you want mountains, find a place that has them in abundance, and it's not a novelty and an expense. So thanks again, and hopefully this was helpful, and good luck. Till next time, bye. Big camera. I'm still waiting for the temperature in my water to be perfect. It's still warming up. I'm gonna end it there. Thanks. Like and subscribe. I gotta support this shirt. It was a gift. I love it. I do. So thanks again.